Hi, everybody. Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping and EFT so that you can eliminate self-sabotage and take the actions that you want. Before we jump in today, just a quick reminder, we have a free 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. All you need to do is go to tappingqa.com, click on the big blue button. If you happen to be in the website right now listening to this, if you go up in the right-hand column, click on the big blue button, you can receive that guide. I was actually talking to one of my clients last Tuesday, and he was mentioning the fact that even though he had downloaded that guide a number of years ago, it was something in the new year that he was revisiting, and every single day he was working through one of the parts, either doing the tap along, applying the tool, learning from the article. It's absolutely free. Tappingqa.com, click on that big blue button so we can get you that free 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. This is Gene Monterostelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 422, originally aired January 15th, 2020. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, we are going to talk about the idea that sometimes the issue that we are dealing with is not the issue itself. It's just a symptom. And how, if we only deal with the symptom, it becomes problematic. And 8 simple questions that you can ask, or 8 simple things that you can do to figure out if you're dealing with a symptom or if you're dealing with root cause, and how to get to that root cause so you can clear it out. Before we do that, I just want to send a big shout out and thank you to all of the supporters of the Tapping Q&A podcast. Most recently, we have received support from Ashley, Clint, Loretto, Lel, Catherine, and Marion. Many of those people who have recently supported the podcast have also gotten a chance to receive a custom tap-along script from me. I recorded a whole bunch of those last Wednesday. If you'd like to support the podcast to ensure that we keep being able to produce such a high-quality program, it takes quite a bit of time and effort and some money for me to be able to get this resource to you. All you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support. And depending on the level that you support at, you can even be in a circumstance where you get a custom tap-along audio from me so that you can use tapping in a way that is specific just for you. tappingqa.com/support. And once again, thank you to all of those people who've been supporting the show for all of these years. Recently, I was working with one of my clients, and he was expressing the fact that he was really frustrated by the fact that there was a particular coworker who got him angry all of the time. And so he would do some tapping afterwards, and he would feel better. And then a couple of days would pass, and they would bump into each other again in some sort of way that they were working together, and the anger would come back, and he would tap, and the anger would come back, and he would tap. And in the process of doing this, he was starting to feel really frustrated. He was frustrated with the fact that he kept feeling angry. He was frustrated with the fact that the tapping wasn't actually working. And as we had the conversation and we poked around the issue and we used a number of the tools that I have and we did some work, what we came to realize was that the anger he was feeling about the coworker, or the anger that was coming up because of the interaction with the coworker, wasn't actually the problem. Now, being angry in the moment is a problem, but what it was is it was just a symptom of a much deeper issue. And so the tapping he was doing was just dealing with the symptom. It would be kind of like if you had a torn tendon in your knee and it was causing you a lot of pain, and you took aspirin for it or some sort of pain medication, and it stopped hurting, and then 3 hours later it started hurting again. That you would be frustrated because the aspirin isn't doing its job. I am still in pain. But in that circumstance, the pain isn't the problem. The pain is a symptom. And the aspirin is not dealing with the problem. It's only dealing with the symptom. So no matter how often I take aspirin, the tear is still going to remain in the tendon. And when the aspirin wears off, I'm going to be back in pain again. And that's exactly what was going on in this particular case. The tapping he was doing was taking an aspirin. There's two types of tapping that we can do, and both of them are useful. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that tapping to help you in the moment is a bad idea, but there's triage tapping where we're just getting ourselves emotionally right. And there's core issue tapping where we're cleaning up an issue so we feel better in the moment. And because we have healed what is going on at the core, we're not going to have to deal with the symptoms again in the future. And like I said, I love triage tapping. In the middle of my workday, when I get overwhelmed by something or I get frustrated by something, doing some triage tapping is the perfect thing for me to do in the middle of the day because I don't have time to go do work with the core issue or even reach out to my practitioner to get help because I can't see the core issue clearly. And so it's great in that moment. But if I have to keep doing it over and over and over and over again, then that can be frustrating. And it would be better if at some point I could find some time and some space to be able to figure out what the root cause is and clear that up so that we're in a circumstance where we feel like the tapping is working. Because in my client's case, it was working, but it wasn't working in the way that he hoped because of the issue that he was tapping on. So here are a number of questions that I ask myself to figure out if I am dealing with a root cause or if I am dealing with something that is a symptom. So the first is this something that is reoccurring? So is it something that comes up over and over again? Oftentimes when I think about something, once is an anomaly, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, but if you find yourself tapping on an issue and it's coming back multiple times, then it is start to ask the question, am I dealing with the symptom instead of dealing with the root cause? The second thing that I like to look at is when it is showing up, is it showing up in the exact same way? In the middle of last year, I had a conversation with Mary Ayers in the podcast where we talked about 3 ways that we can evaluate our progress. And those 3 ways are frequency, duration, and intensity. So if the thing is happening at the same frequency, it's happening over and over again in the exact same way, then I'm probably dealing with a symptom. If I do tapping on something and the issue comes back, but the frequency changes, then I'm actually dealing with the root cause. So for example, if every single time I need to get up and speak in public, I am getting nervous, then the nerves that I'm feeling is probably not the root cause, it's a symptom. But if I do some tapping around it and I go from feeling nervous every single time I speak to feeling nervous every 3rd time I speak, then I'm probably actually dealing with the root cause because the frequency is diminishing. The second thing that we can look at is what is the duration? How long do I stay in the discomfort? If the duration is staying the same, then we might be dealing with the symptom. If the duration is diminishing, we're dealing with the root cause. The third thing is we looked at frequency, looked at duration, it's intensity. Now, intensity is how strong is the emotion. So, for example, let's go back to public speaking. I am nervous about speaking, and as I think about it, it's a 7. The next time I go to speak, I'm feeling nervous, but it's only a 6 or a 5.5 or a 5. So even though the frequency is the same, it's happening around the issue, the duration is the same, it's happening a couple of days before I do it, but the intensity is diminishing. So if the frequency, duration, and intensity is not changing, then more than likely we are dealing with a symptom and we are not dealing with a root cause. The third thing that I like to look at is after I tap on an issue and there is relief, it's almost as if there is a shadow of the issue still hanging around. Like it's lingering in the background. As I tune into it, I can't get a specific intensity, but is it still there? Now, this is something that doesn't happen often, but it's experienced enough with my clients that it's something that is worth noting. So if you are tapping on something and afterwards there's this lingering sensation that you haven't actually gotten it all, that's a great time to ask the question, is this actually the issue, or am I just dealing with the symptom? The fourth question that I like to ask, or the fourth experience that I have that tells me that this is a symptom and it's not the root cause, is if I'm having a really hard time explaining the emotion. I know there's some discomfort. Something doesn't feel right, but I don't know exactly why. So in that case, because there is no information about what is going on, it's going to lead me to believe that the discomfort is a symptom because there is no specifics. Number 5, when I am about to tap on something and it's something that has persisted, like we've talked about before, a way to see if there is a root cause and figure out what that root cause is I like to ask myself the question, what does this remind me of? And to ask yourself that sensation as you feel a sadness, a frustration, an anger, an overwhelm, what does this remind me of? You would be surprised at the information that the subconscious mind brings forward with a question like that. And so by asking that question, if something pops to mind very, very quickly, or even after a few minutes of reflection, it's probably a good thing that is letting us know that what we're talking about is a symptom, and that information that we're getting that is reminding us of is much more closely related to the root cause. So we can tap on the symptom and this information that comes forward, we can unpack that as well. I also like to ask the emotion that I'm feeling, and I do this all the time with my clients, and I do this all the time with myself. I ask the emotional sensation a question. I pretend that it has agency, because the reason I'm doing this is I'm disassociating my conscious mind, and I'm giving my system the opportunity to bring information forward, because if I'm really engaged with my conscious mind, then I'm limited to what I can figure out with the information I have. And I'm notoriously a bad eyewitness to my own experience. And so by asking the physical sensation of the emotion a question, oftentimes I get information. I yesterday was doing a client call with, I do video calls with most of my clients so I can see their face. And oftentimes when we're doing exercises like this, I say, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to tune into the physical sensation of the motion, tune into the tightness in your chest. And almost always my clients close their eyes and you can see them tuning in. And I said, I want you to ask the emotion a question. And you could kind of see them almost like they're just mumbling to themselves, asking the question. And then they got this huge smile on their face with this piece of insight, as if they were just learning or being reminded of something. It was like, oh, right, this is what's going on. So when I have a symptom that is persistent, I will do that. I will tune into it and I'll say, hey, symptom, hey, anger, hey, tightness, hey, overwhelm. What root cause are you really attached to? And you will be surprised at how quickly information comes forward. I was doing this the other day where I was tuning into my physical self. I was doing the grounding process, which was a podcast that I shared a couple podcasts ago. And I was tuning into my physical self and I said, hey, physical self, what do you, and before I could finish, my physical self said, I need this, this, and this. And it listed some really specific foods that my body needed for me to feel healthier. And so ask the sensation the question, hey, do you have a root cause? If I am in a situation where I'm trying to figure out if there's a root cause, like I've asked some of these questions and the root cause isn't coming forward, I tap on the fact that right now my system is not revealing a root cause because it doesn't feel safe to bring the root cause forward. And I give my system permission to know that it is safe to bring forward and reveal this root cause. Because if I do that, I will actually be healthier and I will actually be safer. And as silly as that sounds, it's really amazing. I'm trying to tap on an issue, but my body won't tell me the issue. So I'm going to tap to let my body tell me what the issue is. And the number of times that that happens in a powerful, useful way is so high. So if you've gotten to the point where you've asked a bunch of these previous questions and you haven't come up with a really clear answer to them, tap to let your system know that it is safe to do that. The last thing that I like to do when I'm in a circumstance like this is if I believe that there's a root cause and I am not uncovering it, then what I do is I tap on the idea that my system is allowed to heal this without revealing the root cause to me. I only need to know the root cause if it is useful. Otherwise, it is okay for it to heal and just let it go, because what is more important is the healing than the knowledge. Now, the reason that I tap on something like that is because oftentimes we are in a circumstance in which subconsciously we believe I have to understand what the problem is before I can heal it. Because if I understand what the problem is before I heal it, then I can prevent it in the future. And so it's afraid that if I solve the problem, it's going to come back again because I'm not going to have my guard up. And there are certainly lessons that we need to learn so we don't make the same mistake and we don't fall into the same pit again and again. But there are also things that are impacting us, root issues from our past, which we're never going to encounter again. I am never going to be as powerless and lack agency the way I did when I was 5 years old. So if something happened to me when I was 5, I don't necessarily have to know the ins and out of that particular circumstance, because I'm never going to be in that circumstance again. I'm never going to be that physically small. I'm never going to have that little control and agency the way a small child is. So there is no useful lesson to learn from that. You know, it's much like if I'm never returning to a city, there's no useful lesson that I'm going to need to know about how to navigate that city the next time I come back. It's okay for me just to leave and not try and figure out the problems from the last trip because I'm not coming back. And so I tap to let my system know that I need to clear this, and it doesn't matter if I know the information or not. And the phrase I tap on is, I give my system permission to know I will learn any necessary lesson. And if there's no useful lesson inside of this, it can release and let go without letting me know, because that is safe and healthy. So, but going through this process by giving myself permission to recognize, how frequently is this happening? Is it happening over and over again? I pay attention to the frequency, the duration, the intensity. I see if there's just any lingering thing that doesn't make sense. Is the emotion really hard to explain? If I'm bumping into any of those things, I am probably dealing with a symptom and not a root cause. When I'm starting to engage and trying to clear that, I ask the sensation, what does it remind me of? I ask the sensation what the root cause is. I tap to let my system know it's safe to understand the root cause. And I tap to let my system know I can heal this without knowing what the root cause is. And so if you use those 8 ideas, it's going to help you to figure out if this is something that is a symptom or if this is something that is much deeper than that. And it's going to give you the ability to figure out what that is and go after it. Now, if you have gone through all of this and you're still in a circumstance where you don't know what the root cause is and it's still something that is persistent, then I would really encourage you to reach out to work with a practitioner, because oftentimes a practitioner has distance and tools that help us to uncover things that we can't find on our own. You know, I would consider myself a very good tapper. I would consider myself a very experienced tapper. And I have a practitioner I work with for my stuff because I am too close to my stuff. And sometimes, even with questions like this, even with tools like this, I can't get to the root cause and I need some help. So I hope you found this useful. If you know someone in your life who would also find this useful, please pass it along. If you have any questions about this and this process and these questions, I would love to hear from you. If you've landed in a circumstance where you've explored this and you would like some outside help, I actually have some room in my calendar right now to work with some new clients. Please feel free to reach out. I can be reached Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com, and just find 2 or 3 people in your life who you think would find this interesting and just email it to them. It would mean the world to me. And the most common way people find a new piece of content is from the recommendation of a friend. And so there are people who could appreciate this and could use this who I don't know and I will never meet. And you would be a great conduit to pass it along. The single highest compliment I could receive is you sharing my content with someone else. If you have questions or comments, not just about working with me, about anything at all, like I said, I can be reached Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com. If you have a topic recommendation, if you have a guest you'd like me to interview, I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews in the spring. Please reach out. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of the episodes coming out. We've been putting episodes out every Monday and Wednesday. The Monday episodes are re-edits and remasters of some of our old bonus podcasts. I would encourage you to check out podcast 421, where we did the container process, which I really, really love. And then every Wednesday, we have a new episode. If you subscribe, you're not going to miss any of the episodes going forward. You can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcast and Google Podcast, Spotify, Pandora, basically everywhere you listen to audio online. If you search for Tapping Q&A, you will be able to find the show. Subscribe is always free. Click the subscribe button so you don't miss anything going forward. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli or Tapping Q&A.